Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We lead with Bangladesh again. The chaos is far from over. They're bracing for a nationwide shutdown tomorrow. Nobel Laureate Muhammad Yunus will lead the caretaker government. Meanwhile, no progress in Sheikh Hasina's asylum quest. She's still in India. Protesters in Dhaka want New Delhi to arrest and deport her. We'll bring you the situation on the ground and focus on the Jamaat-e-Islami tonight. The radical Islamist pro-Pakistan group banned by Sheikh Hasina, but now emerging as kingmakers in Bangladesh. In the US, Kamala Harris has named her running mate. Who is Tim Walz and why was he picked? A Pakistani man with links to Iran is arrested in a plot to assassinate American leaders, including Donald Trump. We'll bring you the full story. From the Paris Olympics, the story of a champion. Vinesh Phogat may have lost the medal, but she's won hearts. In the UK, thousands of cops on standby as riots expected to flare up. Rallies and protests have been planned in 100 locations today. In Thailand, another political earthquake. The top court dissolves the country's biggest party. In Sri Lanka, the return of the Rajapaksas, former President Mahinda's son Namal enters a presidential race. A report on breakdancing and other unlikely, interesting and even dangerous Olympic sports. And of course, the joke of the day, this one features a dancing dictator. The headlines first. Thousands flee as Russia battles a major border attack from Ukraine. The incursion began on Tuesday in the western Kursk region. Moscow has deployed air and artillery firepower to repel Ukrainian troops. Kiev has not claimed responsibility for the incursion, which is the most serious one in months. After Mali, Niger breaks off diplomatic ties with Ukraine. In July, the Malian army suffered heavy losses at the hands of separatists. Mali claims Ukraine is backing these rebel groups. Both Niger and Mali are ruled by juntas who have moved away from the West and turned to Russia. China launches air and sea patrols near a flashpoint reef in the South China Sea. This comes as the US and its allies hold joint military drills in the same waters. Tensions between China and the Philippines have escalated in the disputed waterway. It has led to fears of a wider conflict. In India, there's relief for property owners. The government eases new property tax rules. Now there will be an option for indexation relief for properties purchased before the 23rd of July. Real estate stocks had taken a hit after the indexation benefit was removed in the union budget. And Serbia announces plans to build a Novak Djokovic museum. The move comes after Djokovic's gold medal victory at the Paris Olympics. The Serbian was born in Belgrade. The museum is expected to be ready by 2027. Day 3 after Sheikh Hasina's exit. How is Bangladesh faring? Who is going to lead the country? And have the protests ended? We've been tracking all the developments, and here's what we can tell you tonight. A new caretaker government is preparing to take charge. In the last 24 hours, there has been a big shake-up. The police chief has been removed. There's been a reshuffle in the army. Top officials have been fired. A total of 6 posts have new faces now, and the protest is not over. The demonstrators plan to return to the streets. They've called for a nationwide shutdown tomorrow, so all establishments will remain closed. Only hospitals and emergency services will be allowed to operate. Now, all eyes are on the military. What will they do? What role will they play? Will the next government just be a facade with the army running the show from behind, or will the army play the role of a mediator between the protesters, the civil society, and the politicians? We're still waiting to see how it plays out. As of today, as of now, the army seems to be facilitating the transition of power. Yesterday, they met with the protesters. The president of Bangladesh was also present in that meeting. After the meeting, a leader was named. Muhammad Yunus will serve as a caretaker leader of Bangladesh. He's a Nobel laureate. When Hasina's regime fell, he was in Paris for a medical procedure. Today, he returned to Dhaka.
My God. Please. Well, I'm looking.
I'm ambassador.
That's a thing. Just I'm looking forward to going back home and see what's happening there and how we can organize ourselves to get out of the trouble that we are in. Thank you very much.
We've been telling you about Muhammad Yunus on the show. He pioneered the microloans program of Bangladesh. He was called the banker to the poor. His initiative helped millions of people, and for this he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Later, he was accused in almost 100 cases for embezzlement and extortion, and earlier this year he was sentenced to jail for labor law violations. He was out on bail. Today, a Bangladeshi court has overturned the conviction. So Muhammad Yunus has been acquitted of the labor charges today. The protesters wanted him to take over. They firmly rejected the idea of a government appointed by the military.
We primarily proposed internationally renowned and universally accepted Nobel laureate Dr. Muhammad Yunus as the chief advisor of our interim government. Today, the Honorable President has given his consent, confirming that the interim government will be formed quickly with Dr. Muhammad Yunus as the chief advisor.
So for the moment, it appears that the army has yielded to the protesters. They also played a part in persuading Sheikh Hasina to leave. More stories have been coming out. This is what we learned today about what happened in the final hours before Hasina fled Dhaka. On Sunday night, the army chief held a meeting. That's General Waker-Uz-Zaman. He is the army chief. He met with his top officers. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was putting pressure on them. She wanted them to enforce the curfew, to use force to stop the protesters. But General Zaman decided against it. After speaking to his team, he reached out to Sheikh Hasina's office and he conveyed their decision. The army would not fire at civilians. That's what he told her. They will not resort to force. They will not curb the protest. Then on Monday morning, General Zaman went to Sheikh Hasina's residence, where he apparently tried to reason with her. Reports say that the general was quite straightforward in sharing his assessment. He told then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina that the situation was out of control, that the army could no longer stop the crowd. They could not prevent the mobs from reaching her residence, so she must leave. That was his assessment. Hasina was told that she had 1 hour to leave. But apparently she wasn't convinced. She still wanted to hold on to power. General Zaman then asked the family to intervene. Now remember, the army chief, General Zaman, is Sheikh Hasina's relative. He is married to her cousin. So he has a close relationship with the family. He first reached out to Rehana Siddiq, that's Sheikh Hasina's sister. Calls were also made to her children. And then it was the family that convinced Hasina to leave. General Zaman was there throughout. Ultimately, Sheikh Hasina relented. She left the country with her sister Rehana. A few hours after their departure, in fact, the army chief was live on television announcing the Prime Minister's resignation. He also promised a peaceful transition of power. But that's proving to be easier said than done. The situation is still fragile. Maintaining law and order will be a challenge. Today, the police chief of Bangladesh was removed. Yesterday, a large number of police personnel went on strike. Do you know why? Because they were worried about their safety. And that should tell you something about how bad things are. The police need safety assurances. Cops abandoned their posts. They refused to report for duty at multiple locations. So students took their place at many traffic intersections. Take a look at this. A new police chief has now taken over and he has issued an ultimatum. He wants all personnel to return to their posts within the next 24 hours. The opposition is making moves as well. They're trying to fill the political vacuum. The Bangladesh Nationalist Party, or the BNP, called a rally today. That's the party of Khalida Zia. Thousands of their supporters gathered. Khalida Zia addressed this rally virtually from a hospital.
This victory has brought new opportunities for us. The corruption which has been going on in the country for so many days was ignored by the government. Amid all this, we must make Bangladesh prosperous again. For the students who gave up on their dreams by getting involved in bloodshed, we will fulfill those dreams. Students have shown great intellect, courage and bravery while fighting, which will help us in making Bangladesh a republic.
Khalida Zia was Sheikh Hasina's main political rival. When Hasina was in power, Zia and her party faced a fierce crackdown. Until a week ago, it was hard to imagine a comeback for Khalida Zia. She may still not be able to return to active politics given her health, but clearly the tables have turned. It's the ultimate reversal of fortune. Sheikh Hasina was once synonymous with Bangladesh. Today, she is a leader without a country. I know a lot of you have questions like where is she now, where will she go, and how long will India host her? We'll try to answer some of them. First of all, where is Sheikh Hasina? She is still in India at an undisclosed location. She had landed at the Hindon Air Base on the outskirts of Delhi. Later, she was taken to a safe house. Question number 2, where will she go? Well, her options have certainly reduced. At first, Hasina was seeking asylum in the United Kingdom. Her niece is a British lawmaker from the Labour Party. She is also a secretary at the Treasury, so she's quite an influential leader. Yet, London is not welcoming Sheikh Hasina. Their officials say you cannot apply for asylum from outside the UK. You must seek asylum from the first safe country. In this case, that is India, the first safe country for her. Her second option is the United States. Her son works as a lawyer there, Sheikh Hasina's son. He's in the US. But since Hasina has resigned as Prime Minister, her official visa is not valid anymore. A third option is Finland. Again, she has family there. Hasina's nephew works in Helsinki and is married to a Finnish national. But their government is silent. And what about West Asia? Reports say that Hasina could also seek refuge in Saudi Arabia or the UAE, but again, nothing concrete here. At this point, it's all reports and speculation. But why not India? Why can't she remain in India? Her daughter lives in New Delhi after all. The Indian government hosted Hasina 50 years back when her family was killed. So why not now? Because the equation has changed. You see, there is public anger against Sheikh Hasina in Dhaka. So you can't be seen as helping or hosting her. It's also consistent with Indian policy. When the Afghan government fell, many officials sought asylum in India, but New Delhi said no. When Gotabaya Rajapaksa resigned in Sri Lanka, he too reached out to India. New Delhi reportedly said no. I guess Sheikh Hasina is no different in this case. And right now, this is the biggest concern for India. Bangladesh is moving ahead with government formation. Soon, India will have to resume business with Dhaka. How do you do that with Sheikh Hasina still in Delhi? Plus, there are calls to arrest her. Bangladesh's Supreme Court Bar Association has sent a message to India. Arrest Hasina and send her to Bangladesh. That's what they've said. Now, you can ignore the Bar Association. But what if the new government has the same demand? What if the Supreme Court orders her arrest? That's the first concern for India. The second concern is about Hindus in Bangladesh. We told you about this yesterday. Many temples and Hindu homes were targeted. But the chaos seems to have subsided now. We haven't seen fresh reports of violence against Hindus. So the focus now is on due process. Holding those mobs and rioters accountable, we're yet to see that. Bangladeshi courts are handing out mass bail orders. More than 2,200 people got bail on Tuesday. Most of them are from the Jamaat and the BNP, the two main political groups now. So who answers for the destruction? Let me show you an example. This is what the Indira Gandhi Cultural Center in Dhaka looks like, completely torched now. It was inaugurated back in 2010. This center promoted cultural exchanges between India and Bangladesh. Look at how it looks today. Will the mob that targeted this building be punished? Or will these crimes be forgotten? India will be keeping a close eye on all of that, which brings us to the final concern, making sure that enemies do not capitalize on this chaos. Take a look at this report. It says Pakistan's spy agency could be spreading anti-India sentiment in Bangladesh. Now, just to be clear, there is no evidence to back these claims. All you have is an allegation. But even if Pakistan is not involved, someone is. Just look at these social media posts. They claim that Indian spies are operating in Dhaka, that Indian soldiers are on the ground. Needless to say, this is all fake news, but it could create anti-India sentiments among the people there, and New Delhi must be wary of that. It must push back against this misinformation. It must also lobby for justice. India has respected the internal churn in Dhaka. There has been no undue criticism or meddling from New Delhi, so it's Dhaka's turn now to return the favor. Sheikh Hasina is Bangladesh's past, but who will be the future? By all accounts, it could be the Jamaat-e-Islami, the radical Islamist organization. Their supporters played a key role in Sheikh Hasina's ouster. Thousands of them joined the student protests. Thousands of Jamaatis joined the student protests, and they turned it into a nationwide revolt. Now, reports say the Jamaat is the largest opposition party in Bangladesh, even bigger than the BNP or the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. So let's take a closer look at this group. What do they stand for? What is their platform, and how will they shape Bangladesh? The Jamaat was founded before India's partition. They opposed Bangladesh's liberation in 1971. Many of their leaders collaborated with Pakistan's army, and it tells you what they really stand for. Not secularism, not Bengali nationalism. They stand for Islamism. Just look at what the Jamaat website says, and I'm quoting, "Since its inception, the Jamaat-e-Islami has been working to implement the Islamic code of life. To establish Islam in its entirety, the Jamaat-e-Islami strives to present the real picture of Islam to all citizens." They do not talk about human rights. They do rather talk about human rights and democracy, but their track record is pretty bad. Look at this report submitted to the United Nations. Look at how it describes the Jamaat as an Islamo-fascist group. Those tendencies were clear from the very start. After 1971, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman banned the Jamaat. He accused them of atrocities against Hindus. But as Bangladesh lurched towards Islamism, the Jamaat revived itself. They allied with the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, that's Khalida Zia's party, and the BNP gave them a free hand. A major turning point was in 2013. Massive protests were underway in Bangladesh. They wanted capital punishment for war criminals in 1971. And guess who opposed this? The Jamaat. They organized counter-protests in Dhaka. So in 2013, the Jamaat lost its political status. They could not contest elections anymore. Another round of crackdown came this year. Sheikh Hasina accused them of escalating the student protests. So the group, the Jamaat, was outrightly banned. Of course, all of that has changed now. On Monday, the army chief convened an all-party meeting in Dhaka. Sheikh Hasina's party, the Awami League, was not there, but the Jamaat was present. So the takeaway is pretty clear. Jamaat-e-Islami now has a seat at the table. The question is, how will they shape Bangladesh's future? Well, the Jamaat held a press conference yesterday. Listen to what they said.
We as a society must work together with the criminal system. Those who committed crimes should be held responsible, and when the country gets back its justice system, they should be put on trial. If we let them go, they will wreak havoc in society again. This is our country. If the country survives, we will survive.
We must look ahead. We must hold the mobs accountable. Basically, the Jamaat is trying to say that we have changed. We are not the old Islamo-fascists. Does any of this sound familiar? A civilian leader toppled, followed by promises of reform by a radical Islamist group. We saw the same thing in Afghanistan. We were promised Taliban 2.0. And we all know how that played out. So this is a crucial moment in Bangladesh's history. I know the students are calling it a revolution, and for them maybe it is, but not for the Jamaat. For the Jamaat-e-Islami, this is an opportunity of a lifetime, a chance to reset Bangladesh's identity from secularism and progress to Islamism and conservative thought. It looks inevitable right now, especially because of how weak the BNP is. They must take a huge part of the blame, though, because the BNP legitimized the Jamaat. Khalida Zia gave them a cabinet post in the year 2001. She turned a fringe group into a political partner. But now the equation has flipped. The BNP appears rudderless. Khalida Zia is terminally ill. Her son is the acting chairman of the party, but he lives in London. He's been there for more than a decade. Other leaders are either in jail or they keep a low profile. But more importantly, the BNP lacks an agenda. We know what Hasina stood for. We know what Jamaat stands for. But what does the BNP stand for? Nobody knows. Thus, the BNP vacated its political space in Bangladesh and the Jamaat has stepped in. What happens next is very crucial. Elections will be held soon. The Jamaat will probably campaign on reform and change. But let's hope the people of Bangladesh see through all of it. This is a party that helped Pakistan slaughter Bangladeshis. That sort of hatred never really changes.
Listen, I want you to do this with me. Let's do this together. Would you be my running mate and let's get this thing on the road?
I would be honored.
Let's talk about the US elections now. The Democrats have chosen, it's official now, Kamala Harris is the Democratic presidential candidate. There were no doubts about it, but she had to formally secure the nomination, and now she has. And that makes her the first woman of color to lead the party ticket.
Good evening, Philadelphia! Oh, it is good to be back in Pennsylvania. I stand before you today to proudly announce I am now officially the Democratic nominee for President of the United States.
You saw how she was welcomed with loud cheers in Philadelphia. And who's that man with her? It's Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. Yesterday, Kamala Harris picked him as her running mate. So he is the Democratic vice presidential candidate.
Since the day that I announced my candidacy, I set out to find a partner who can help build this brighter future. A leader who will help unite our nation and move us forward. So, Pennsylvania, I'm here today because I found such a leader. Governor Tim Walz of the great state of Minnesota.
If you don't track US politics closely, you may have never heard of Walz. Even if you are in America, you may not have come across his name. Look at this poll. 70% registered voters say they do not know Walz. 70% have no opinion about him. So he's mostly unknown. Why then did Kamala Harris choose him of all people? We could list a number of reasons, but here's the biggest one perhaps. An interview that took place last month. Tim Walz went on TV. He was talking about Donald Trump and he called him, and I'm quoting, just weird. Soon that phrase, just weird, took a life of its own. Gen Z loved it. The Democrats latched onto it. They used it to attack the Republicans. So Walz became viral, and that helped boost his chance. Yesterday, he repeated his now famous words.
I got to tell you, pointing out just an observation of mine that I made. I just have to say it. You know it. You feel it. These guys are creepy, and yes, just weird as hell. That's what you see. That's what you see.
The Democrats won't stop milking it, and we get why. It's short, it's effective, and the youth are connecting to it. But a catchphrase alone cannot make you the VP pick. You have to have more to offer. So we made a list of 5 things you must know about Tim Walz. Number 1, his resume is packed. Walz was a military veteran, he was a public high school teacher, and he was a football coach. So he appeals to blue-collar America. In 2006, he flipped a Republican-leaning district. In 2019, he left the US House, he ran for governor in Minnesota, and he won. But his first term was almost like a dumpster fire. There was the pandemic and the killing of George Floyd in his state. Walz governed through all of this, and he was re-elected in 2022.
Tim Walz is a good moral man. He's got a good background. He's got a good sense of humor. I think he's a perfect match for Kamala Harris. I'm just delighted.
I'm not sure how much an effect it'll have. I don't know how much the public knows about Walz outside of those that live in Minnesota.
Number 2. While Walz is from rural America, he is a liberal favorite. He's pushed multiple progressive policies. He enshrined abortion rights in his state. He funded universal free school meals. He legalized recreational marijuana. Labor unions love him. So for Democrats, he's the man for the job. But he's not your typical progressive. Which brings us to point number 3, Walz's gun policy. Guns have always been central to his life. He used to be a hunting enthusiast. He spent 24 years in the National Guard. In 2006, he was endorsed by the NRA. That's the National Rifle Association. They gave him an A rating. They even endorsed him in elections. But all this changed in 2017. Walz had a change of heart after a Las Vegas festival shooting. He spoke in favor of a ban on assault weapons. He strengthened gun laws in his state. So he's now a changed man, he says. But there's something else in his resume that raises questions. And that's his connect with China, his China connect. That's point number 4. Walz taught in China for a year. It was in 1989, the same year as the Tiananmen Square massacre. Later in 1994, he and his wife honeymooned there. He speaks Mandarin. He has even arranged summer trips for students to the country, and this has raised eyebrows in Beijing. Weibo users, social media users in Beijing are asking if Tim Walz is a CIA operative, and the Trump camp is going to town with a China link.
My view on it is it just highlights how radical Kamala Harris is. This is a person who listened to the Hamas wing of her own party and selecting a nominee. This is a guy who's proposed shipping more manufacturing jobs to China, who wants to make the American people more reliant on garbage energy instead of good American energy, and has proposed defunding the police just as Kamala Harris does.
Point number 5, Walz's appointment is making Republicans very mad, and you can understand why. He's popular among the progressives, but he still appeals to rural America, which is a good balance. Though the Trump campaign is calling him a hard left liberal. They're bringing up his handling of the Floyd protests. They're thrashing his policies. And when that's not working, they're targeting his age, which is a bit tricky. Walz is 60 years old, almost the same age as Kamala Harris, but the Republicans insist that he's older. Guess the age debate never really leaves American politics. But now the race is clearly heating up. Both sides have their candidates, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz on one side, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance on the other. They're pouring in money. The Republicans have spent $181 million on ads. The Democrats have spent around $325 million. They're outspending Trump and team. But will it work? We'll find out soon enough. And staying with the United States, it has charged a Pakistani man over a plot to assassinate American officials. His name is Arif Merchant. The arrested man, Arif Merchant, he has links to Iran. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, is handling this case. It is America's Domestic Intelligence and Security Service. Now, the FBI calls this, and I'm quoting, a dangerous murder-for-hire plot. They say Arif Merchant was hiring hitmen. The plan was to kill American politicians, and one of the targets on this list was Donald Trump. Now, we know that the former US President, Donald Trump, was shot at in July. Was Merchant part of that plot? Our next report tells you.
In April, Arif Merchant came to New York City. He was a Pakistani citizen. He had spent some time in Iran, But in America, he had a simple goal: to assassinate US officials. So Merchant went looking for a hitman. He contacted someone for leads. That man became his new confidant. In June, Merchant met him. He set out a list of demands. He needed around 30 men and women to do 3 things. 1. Steal documents or USB drives from the house of one person. 2. Plan protests at political rallies. And 3. Carry out assassinations. The meeting went on for some time. Merchant plotted possible scenarios on ways to kill a person who has a lot of security around him. But what Merchant didn't know was that his confidential source had ratted him out. He had already dialed the FBI. He was working as a double agent for them. So later that month, Merchant met what he thought were hitmen, but they were actually law enforcement officers. He paid them $5,000 in advance. He said he wanted them to kill a political person sometime in late August or early September. He even gave the hitmen codes. T-shirt meant protests, flannel shirts stood for stealing, and fleece jackets meant assassination. Of course, his plan was to leave the country before the assassination, but he was arrested soon after. So who was Merchant trying to kill? It was Donald Trump. Merchant has now been charged in the foiled assassination plot of the former president. This plot is, however, unrelated to his actual shooting, which took place on the 13th of July. Trump was shot at by a 20-year-old man named Thomas Crooks. The attacker was killed on sight by a US sniper. Back to Merchant's plan to kill Trump. How was this assassination attempt linked to Iran? In 2020, Qasem Soleimani was killed by a United States airstrike in Baghdad. He was an Iranian military general and one of the country's most powerful and celebrated men. That strike was ordered by Donald Trump when he was the US president. That made him enemy number 1 in Iran. Trump and his officials have since been on Tehran's radar, so an Iranian plot to kill him doesn't sound hard to believe. This plot also prompted the US government to beef up Trump's security. And not just Trump, they did it for a dozen other top officials. Trump got more agents, more snipers, and even drones. All this was done before the former president was shot at during a rally last month. But the irony of the matter is, even then, they couldn't prevent a lone shooter from taking aim at Trump.
What makes a champion? Is it a gold medal around the neck? Or a number 1 ranking? Or a victory at the World Championships? We say it's a lot more. Champions are not just defined by victories, they're defined by their actions, their courage, their perseverance, and their honor. And tonight we're talking about one such champion, Indian wrestler Vinesh Phogat. If you're watching us from India, you know this story already. You've probably read a dozen articles, scrolled through hundreds of tweets, and talked to your friends about it. Nonetheless, bear with me. Vinesh Phogat was competing at the Paris Olympics. Her event, the 50 kg women's wrestling. She had a fabulous day on the mat yesterday. She scored 3 consecutive wins to reach the final. One of them against Yui Sasaki. Now, Sasaki is a bit of a legend. She was unbeaten in 82 wrestling bouts, but yesterday Vinesh Phogat bested her. She ended the day after qualifying for the finals. I'm guessing most fans went to sleep with a smile on their face. But this morning, the bad news came in. Vinesh Phogat had been disqualified, not just from the gold medal match, but from the whole tournament. She wouldn't even get the bronze medal. The reason? Her weight. You see, wrestling has weight classes. Suppose you're taking part in the 50 kg event. Then your weight must be under 50 kilograms. If you're over, you cannot participate. And how is that checked? Through weigh-ins. Wrestlers have to prove their weight twice, once on the morning of the preliminary event and then before the final rounds. Now, Vinesh was fine on the first test. She came in at around 49 kilograms. But today, she weighed 50.1 kilograms. That's just 100 grams extra. 100 grams, basically the weight of a bar of soap. But the organizers disqualified her. Now, I know what you're thinking. How does something like this even happen? After all, this is the Olympics. Don't we have trainers? Don't we have coaches looking after this sort of thing? Well, we do. But weight management for wrestlers is quite complicated. Vinesh Phogat's natural weight is around 56 kilograms. So she cut a lot of mass to remain under 50. We're talking extreme measures here. Very little food, long sauna sessions, virtually no fluids, and continuous exercise. The idea is to drain every ounce of weight from the body. But here's the problem. You have to refuel while competing. Vinesh had 3 grueling bouts on Tuesday, so she had to take some food and fluids. But since the body is so famished, that little food adds quickly to your weight. And that's what happened to Vinesh Phogat. By the end of Tuesday, she weighed just above 52 kilograms. So her team got cracking. She spent the whole night trying to bring her weight down. No food, no water, constant exercise. They even shortened her hair and tried to draw her blood. But no luck. Losing more weight was just not possible, which brings us to this morning. Her team tried to ask for more time from the organizers, but they refused. Thus, Vinesh Phogat's Olympic dreams were dashed, and all of India was heartbroken. I know a lot of you are hurting right now. We've also seen a lot of conspiracy theories online, but spare a thought for Vinesh Phogat. She was so drained that she had to be taken to a clinic. She needed medical help after that brutal night. So if there was a conspiracy, trust me, she will talk about it. Because Vinesh Phogat is not just a fighter on the mat, she's a fighter in real life too. Look at everything that she's been through. Her 2016 Olympics campaign ended in heartbreak. She was injured in the quarterfinal. At the Tokyo Games, she faced a different challenge. Vinesh was taking part in the 53 kg weight class, but again, the weight cut was brutal. She suffered from a neurological condition. It left her dazed on the mat. Even her eyesight was affected. As she was recovering from her injury, India found a new star in the 53 kg event, Antim Pangal. Only one wrestler could qualify from India, so Vinesh Phogat decided to focus on a different weight class, the 50 kg event, which meant even more weight cut. But her biggest challenge would come in 2023. Vinesh led a movement against the then chief of India's Boxing Federation. She exposed him as a sexual predator. You may remember these scenes. At one point, Vinesh Phogat was pinned on the floor by Delhi police. She also faced a lot of online hate. But like I said, she's a fighter. She found redemption on the Olympic mat. Today, the whole country is cheering for her. The Indian Olympic Association is also standing behind Vinesh Phogat. They're planning to protest her disqualification.
We are providing Vinesh all medical and emotional support. The Wrestling Federation of India has filed an appeal to UWW to consider the decision to disqualify Vinesh, and IOA is following that up in the strongest possible manner.
We don't know what the future holds. Maybe the appeal will be successful, or maybe the decision will hold. Either way, India has gained a champion today, a role model for young girls, an inspiration for athletes, and a symbol of courage. Someone on social media summed it up best. Maybe the 100 grams was her invisible gold medal. Now let's look at the UK. Riots have broken out in almost every corner of the country, anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant riots, which were sparked by a horrific attack last week. A 17-year-old British citizen stabbed multiple children last Monday. At a dance studio in the city of Southport, 3 young girls were killed, leading to public fury, which has morphed into the ongoing riots. The attacker was born in the UK in Wales to parents of Rwandan origin. But the rioters don't seem to believe that. Many think that he is a Muslim migrant. Even though the police say that he has no known links to Islam, the rioters don't believe the police though. They've been targeting mosques and immigrant shelters to express their anger against those two communities. The riots began last Tuesday and have been taking place every day since. Today is supposed to be one of the worst days yet. The rioters are reportedly targeting more than 100 locations across Britain. 100. Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer is mobilizing the police to protect these places.
We're doing everything we can to ensure that where a police response is needed, it's in place. where support is needed for particular places, that is in space. Obviously, it's a difficult situation with disorder going on in a number of different places at the same time.
Starmer has raised what he calls a standing army of about 6,000 police officers. He will be hoping that it will be enough to protect all the known targets. But that doesn't mean that riots won't break out elsewhere. The rioters are also expanding their targets. It's not just mosques and immigrant shelters anymore. Today, they plan to attack legal firms and advisories, basically places that help refugees with their asylum applications. So the message is clear. The British rioters want an end to immigration. They want to end multiculturalism. And they don't seem to care who gets hurt in the process. The rioters are organizing online. They've been sending out instructions telling others to wear masks or hoodies and leave their phones at home so they won't be identified by security cameras. Their preparations have left British authorities worried. Prime Minister Starmer held an emergency meeting yesterday, his second so-called Cobra meeting in as many days, to find a way to stop the rioters. He seems to be hoping to scare them into submission.
Over 400 people now have been arrested, 100 have been charged, some in relation to online activity, and a number of them are already in court. And I'm now expecting substantive sentencing before the end of this week. But the message has to go to those who are involving themselves in this disorder, which is you're wrong, you shouldn't be doing it, and you will feel the full force of the law, as I hope we've been able to demonstrate with these swift prosecutions.
Yesterday, we told you how British courts are scheduled to stay open for 24 hours a day to fast-track the sentencing of those arrested. But that may not be enough to deter the rioters. That's what a majority of British citizens believe anyway. Here's a survey that was released yesterday. More than half of the country believes that the rioters will get away. And that may be why a wave of counter-protest is also underway. British Muslims and pro-immigrant demonstrators have also taken to the streets. And their plan is simple: outnumber the rioters, prevent them from carrying out the attacks. This, however, creates another headache for the British police, because they now have to place themselves between the two groups to prevent clashes from breaking out. So these counter-protesters are also a problem. But critics of the government say that the counter-protesters are being given a free pass. Critics like Elon Musk. Musk has been criticizing Keir Starmer over the last few days over these riots, and yesterday he took it up a notch. He called the British Prime Minister two-tier Keir. What does that mean? Critics say that there's a two-tier policing system in the UK where the far right is dealt with more harshly compared to the other protesters. So two different approaches for two different groups. That is the charge. British officials have denied this, of course.
It's complete nonsense. We have commentators from either end of the political spectrum who like to throw accusations of bias at the police, because we stand in the middle, we operate independently under the law without fear or favour. And if you've got crazy views over there, you don't like it, and if you've got crazy views from over there, you don't like it. We will continue to do that.
But will people buy this explanation? Right now, two-tier policing is becoming another flashpoint. It's fueling even more anger among the anti-immigrant crowd, making fresh riots even more likely. Will Prime Minister Keir Starmer and his police be able to stem the violence? We'll be tracking this story for you as it unfolds. Now let's turn our attention to Thailand. The Southeast Asian country is in the grip of a political crisis again. The Thai Supreme Court has passed an order dissolving the reformist political party called Move Forward. That's the name of the party, Move Forward. Now, this is the kingdom's most popular party. They secured a decisive win in last year's elections, but they were blocked from coming to power. And that's when the party leader, Pita Limjaroenrat, had resigned. Now, the court has banned Pita and 10 other senior party figures. They've been barred from politics for 10 years. This is a major blow to Thailand's eroding democracy. What does this verdict mean for the country and its people? And can the Move Forward party still rise from the ashes? Here's a report.
tears of disappointment, rage, and sheer denial. These are the scenes from the headquarters of the Move Forward Party. This is Thailand's popular anti-establishment party. It's the country's largest opposition party, but today the Thai court dissolved it.
The Constitutional Court unanimously decided to dissolve the Move Forward Party, the respondent party, in accordance with the constitutional regulations regarding political parties.
If Thai democracy is a game, which it kind of seems to be, then lèse-majesté has earned a point, and Move Forward has received a fresh setback. It has lost the match. But what does this mean? And why does it matter? Let's break this down for you. Last year, Thailand held its elections. The Move Forward party defied expectations. It outperformed every other party. Clearly, the people wanted change. But the Move Forward party was not able to form a government. The military-appointed Senate blocked it. Why? Over its lèse-majesté proposals. Lèse-majesté, or royal defamation, is a notoriously harsh law in the Southeast Asian country. Criticizing the Thai monarchy is a serious offense. It can lead to decades in prison. Hundreds of people have been prosecuted in recent years. This year, an online activist was sentenced to a record 50 years in prison. Anyone can be sent to jail, and anyone can bring the charges on behalf of the king. The Move Forward party pledged to change this. But Thailand's powerful establishment didn't like it one bit. So despite its decisive win in the elections, the Move Forward party was sidelined. And its young and charismatic leader, Pita Limcharoenrat, was forced to resign. This January, the Thai Constitutional Court passed a ruling. It called the Move Forward party's campaign to change lèse-majesté unconstitutional. And now, the court ordered not only the dissolution of the party, but it has also banned Pita and 10 other senior party leaders from politics for 10 years.
Today, I came to support the Move Forward Party. I am a suspect in a Section 112 case and a person with disabilities. I don't know what to say to the Constitutional Court for delivering the ruling to dissolve the party like this. I am at a loss for words.
It feels like we have hit rock bottom, truly hit rock bottom. It feels like we have no support left, none at all.
The verdict has pretty much disenfranchised 14 million people. It has unabashedly eroded the kingdom's democratic rights. This verdict is also a stark reminder of how far Thai institutions will go to preserve the monarchy's power. History is simply repeating itself. This is more or less what happened in 2020. Back then, Move Forward was called the Future Forward Party. It did unexpectedly well in the 2019 election. Then too, it was dissolved by the courts. But the party rose like a phoenix, renamed itself to the Move Forward Party, contested in the 2023 elections, and secured a bigger and better win, only to meet the same fate. As of now, the party has 142 surviving MPs. They are expected to transfer to another registered party and make sure that this ruling does not end the reformist movement in the country.
I did not expect that the result would be like this. I am sad, but I don't regret anything. Ultimately, we as people will keep on fighting.
The Move Forward party may have lost the match, but they are adamant that they won't quit the game.
Now let's turn our attention to Sri Lanka. Some big news came out of the island nation today. It's about the upcoming presidential election slated for September. A new contender has thrown his hat in the ring. He's a young, fresh face, but with a very familiar name.
I am ready to take up the challenge. In a crisis, leaders and youth are needed. As a party, we believe in our supporters and our principles. The party will represent the aspirations of the youth.
Yes, Rajapaksa is once again vying to become Sri Lanka's president. That was Namal Rajapaksa, the son of Mahinda Rajapaksa, Sri Lanka's former president and prime minister. Namal is also the nephew of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the president who was ousted in 2022, when the people rose up all over the country because of the economic crisis. So between them, Namal's father and uncle held Sri Lanka's presidency for almost 12 years. But now it seems that it's time for the next generation. Namal Rajapaksa is 38 years old. He will run in Sri Lanka's next presidential election, which is scheduled for the 21st of September. He was declared his party's candidate this morning in an elaborate Buddhist ceremony, re-emphasizing the Rajapaksa clan's Sinhalese Buddhist roots. Namal was also seen receiving blessings from his father, Mahinda Rajapaksa, signaling the change of guard. That may also be the need of the hour for the Rajapaksas. Remember, this is the family blamed for Sri Lanka's economic crisis. The 2022 crisis occurred due to unsustainable debt. Colombo could not repay its loans, so it defaulted on the debt. Who took these loans? Mahinda Rajapaksa, Namal's father. Who was in charge when the default took place? Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Namal's uncle. So the Rajapaksa clan is intrinsically linked with Sri Lanka's crisis. Will Namal Rajapaksa be able to overcome that baggage? Will he be able to stand apart from his family's legacy? It will require quite a bit of skill. And Namal Rajapaksa is not some greenhorn. He has been part of Sri Lankan politics for years. He first became a parliamentarian in the year 2010 at the age of just 24. He won from his father's old seat, Hambantota, which is a Rajapaksa stronghold and the site of the now infamous Chinese-built port. The people of Hambantota sent Namal to parliament, first in 2010 and in every election since then. But he wasn't just an MP. In 2020, he was made the sports minister of the country during the presidency of his uncle Gotabaya Rajapaksa. And sports was a good fit for Namal. After all, he was once the captain of Sri Lanka's national rugby team. He captained the national side while he was an MP between 2010 and 2014. Of course, that did lead to allegations of nepotism. And that's not all. In 2011, while he was a rugby-playing member of parliament, he also took oath as an attorney at law. That too was controversial. There were allegations that he cheated during the final exam, but nothing came out of it in the end. It was just an allegation, and Namal eventually became Sri Lanka's sports minister. But his ministerial tenure did not last long. Remember, he was part of his uncle's cabinet. When Gotabaya Rajapaksa fled Sri Lanka in 2022, the entire cabinet resigned. Namal remained an MP, but he has stayed away from government for the past 2 years. The entire Rajapaksa clan has. They've stayed away. For the last 2 years, this man has led Sri Lanka, Ranil Wickremesinghe. Wickremesinghe has been working to repair his country's devastated economy, and he was expected to continue as president. He was seen as a front-runner in the September election. But that has changed now because of Namal's entry. You see, Wickremesinghe is in power mostly thanks to the Rajapaksa clan. The party led by the Rajapaksas supported him. But now that support has split. Some want Wickremesinghe to continue, others want to back Namal. So it is a contest. Ranil Wickremesinghe versus Namal Rajapaksa. Who will walk away with Sri Lanka's top job? And will another contender come up? All we know at this point is this: the Sri Lankan presidential election just got thrown wide open. And now some breaking news from the Olympics. Well, not in the literal sense of the word. We are talking about breaking, what many call break dancing. It is a dizzying mix of moves to hip-hop tunes, and it is making a debut at the Paris Olympics. But is breaking actually a sport? Why has it been added to the Olympics? We'll tell you. We'll also discuss how the games have evolved over the years with weird, wacky and even dangerous additions and deletions. Here's a report.
A whirl, a twist and a leap. These intense contortions are an art form, but they're also a sport, at least according to the Olympics. This is breaking, and it's witnessing a watershed moment, because more than 50 years since its inception, it's making its debut as an Olympic sport in Paris. B-boys and B-girls are vying for gold. But while they chase glory, they want to make two things clear. First, this is called breaking, not break dancing, which is a term coined by the media. And secondly, yes, breaking is a sport.
I'm dancing, you know, and I see in the representation of my country at the Olympic stage is the mission for me.
Breaking started in the basements and parks of New York as simplistic party moves and dance battle essentials. Breaking was conceived by Black and Hispanic youth. Back then, it was a means of self-expression and even escapism and inclusivity. But over time, breaking has been cultivated into a serious physical performance with athletic moves and strict rules, from execution and musicality to originality and technique. So this year, breakers will face off on their biggest stage ever.
You know, we came from the streets in Black and brown communities. Breaking has really kind of globalized, and now we have this like extremely beautifully diverse world, because breaking is a lot more accessible than a lot of other sports and art forms that are out there.
Going into something like the Olympics for the very first time, we are now the faces of breaking for a bigger audience and a bigger platform.
But this is not only exciting for the breaking athletes, it's also good news for the Olympics. The International Olympic Committee has been searching for ways to attract a younger audience. In recent years, they have added surfing, sport climbing and skateboarding to the list of competitions. And now, breaking is another addition because it's culturally relevant and it's a hit on social media. But the games have not only made additions over the years, they've made several deletions as well. Life-saving was once an Olympic sport. It had events like mannequin relays and rescue races. Tug-of-war lasted for 5 years. Painting and sculpture was considered a sport as well. But if you think this is absurd, the Olympics also had pigeon shooting. And for a while, they weren't just shooting birds, they were also shooting at each other with pistol dueling. They used wax pistols, but still. Many are glad that this competition was discontinued. Olympics' forgotten sports is a long line. Anything that was too boring, weird or dangerous was discontinued to create space for newer sports like breaking. It may be tough to digest this as an Olympic sport, but with its debut, athletes are already breaking barriers.
By now, you must be familiar with our new segment, Joke of the Day. But I must confess, it's a lot harder than we thought because the world is so serious nowadays. There's a controversy everywhere, in politics, in elections, even in sports. So tonight, we're mixing the two. It's about a controversial leader who is objectively funny. Let me introduce you to Nicolas Maduro, President of Venezuela since 2013 and permanent brand ambassador of flashy overshirts. He is under a lot of pressure now. The opposition claims he rigged the recent election, but frankly, it's unfair. Maduro is willing to stake it all for democracy, even if it means fighting Elon Musk inside a cage. That is called real courage, and I really hope the fight happens. Because for the first time, fans will be hoping that both fighters get knocked out. But jokes aside, Maduro is slightly older than Musk, so chances are Musk has the edge here, unless of course it's a dance-off, in which case all bets are on Maduro. Take a look. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. India and Germany hold joint air defense exercise Tarang Shakti in Coimbatore. The world's biggest iceberg, twice the size of London, was caught spinning continuously in the Antarctic. And ice hockey reaches new heights, quite literally, with the world's highest game taking place in Switzerland. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in the year 1905, India began the Swadeshi movement against British rule. Indians were urged to boycott foreign goods and rely on domestic products. The movement led to a renewed sense of nationalism in India. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.